The countdown that never ended. The clock on my phone read 11:58 p.m. For the 14th time in a row, when I finally admitted something was catastrophically wrong. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the device. Around me, Times Square pulsed with a million bodies, all of them counting down to midnight. All of them trapped in the same 2-minute loop, and none of them, not a single goddamn one, seemed to notice except me. 10, 9, they screamed, their voices hoarse from repetition I could remember, but they couldn't. I was Sarah Chen, 32 years old, and I'd come to New York City alone for New Year's Eve 2023 because my fiancé had left me 3 months earlier, and I'd wanted to prove I could still do things by myself. Big, brave things. The kind of things that said, I'm fine, even when you're disintegrating inside. Now, I would have given anything to be back in my empty apartment in Chicago, wrapped in blankets, watching the ball drop on TV like a normal person. The first time the countdown happened, it had been magical. Confetti cannons, strangers kissing, the ball dropping in its brilliant, glittering descent. Then my phone had buzzed, 11:58 p.m., and everyone around me had started counting again. Same words, same enthusiasm, same couple to my left having their first kiss of the new year for the second time, her red lipstick smearing his mouth in an identical pattern. By the 7th loop, I'd tried to leave. The crowd was too dense, bodies packed so tightly I could feel the woman behind me breathing against my neck, her breath always smelling like champagne and spearmint gum. I'd pushed and shoved and screamed, but the mass of people was impenetrable. And every time I made progress, the clock would reset, and I'd find myself back in the exact same spot, wedged between the kissing couple and a group of college kids with foam fingers. Now, on the 14th repetition, I noticed details I'd missed before. The man in the black coat 30 feet away was crying. Not happy tears. His face was contorted in silent agony, and blood was running from his nose. He was looking right at me. He knew. 7, 6. The woman next to me, the one who kept kissing her boyfriend, had a name tag I hadn't seen earlier. My stomach lurched. I looked down at my own coat. There was a name tag there too, one I definitely hadn't put on. 4, 3. I ripped the tag off. Beneath it, my coat had rotted through, the fabric crumbling into gray dust that smelled like old paper. And something else. Something sweet and wrong, like flowers left too long in a vase. My skin underneath was pale, almost translucent, and I could see darkness moving beneath it, writhing like something alive. 1. The ball dropped, confetti fell. The crowd erupted, and my phone buzzed. 11:58 p.m. No, I whispered. But this time was different. This time I could see them, the ones who knew. Scattered throughout the crowd, maybe 40 or 50 people with expressions of absolute terror. All of them looking at each other with desperate recognition. The crying man. A teenage girl clutching her mother's arm, screaming words that were drowned out by the countdown. An elderly man who was tearing at his own face, pulling away strips of skin that regenerated instantly. 10, 9. I pushed toward the crying man. He saw me coming and shook his head violently, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Don't come closer. But I kept going, because he was the only other person who understood, and I needed to know if he knew why this was happening, if he knew how to stop it. I was 10 feet away when I saw what he was really looking at. It wasn't me. It was behind me. I turned. The kissing couple had stopped mid-embrace. They were perfectly still, frozen like mannequins, except their eyes were open and tracking me as I moved. Their name tags had changed. 7, 6. All around me, people were stopping. Hundreds of them. Thousands. All going still while continuing to scream the countdown with unmoving mouths. The sound was coming from somewhere else now, echoing from the buildings themselves, from the sky, from inside my own skull. The crying man grabbed my shoulders. Up close, I could see that his tears were black, leaving tar-like streaks down his cheeks. He screamed into my face. 14, I gasped. His face crumpled. I'm on 63. Oh God, I'm on 63 and I can't keep... He looked down at his hands. They were starting to become transparent, fading like an overexposed photograph. It's taking us. What's taking us? 4, 3. The year, he sobbed. The year doesn't want to change. It's holding on. It's holding all of us here. Everyone who wanted midnight to last forever. Everyone who couldn't let go of the old year. Everyone who is afraid of what comes next. We're the anchors. I looked down at my hands. They were fading too, becoming see-through, and beneath the translucent skin, I could see gears, actual gears made of bone and sinew, all of them turning backward. 1. This time, when the ball dropped, I dropped with it. My knees hit the pavement. Except there was no pavement anymore. Just a vast clock face stretching in every direction, its numbers written in the frozen faces of people I'd been standing next to. The kissing couple formed the 12th. The college kids were 3, 6, 9. The crying man was dissolving into the mechanism itself, his body unwinding like thread. My phone buzzed. 11:58 p.m. 10, 9. But now I could see what was counting down. The city was peeling away in layers, revealing the massive gear system beneath it, and at the center, at the exact point where the ball should have been, was something that hurt to look at. A knot in time itself, pulsing and wet, made of every midnight that had ever happened and every midnight that never would. And it was full of people, thousands of them, maybe millions, all pressed together inside that impossible space. All of them counting down forever, their mouths open in endless screaming joy and terror. And I understood with perfect, horrible clarity that they'd been there for years. Decades. Every New Year's Eve, more people fell into the knot. People who wanted midnight to last. People who couldn't face the new year. People like me who'd come to Times Square hoping to feel less alone, and instead found something that wanted them so badly, it would never let them leave. 7, 6. I was moving toward it. Not walking, being pulled, sliding across the clock face as its gears ground me down, making me smaller, flatter, simpler. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. I tried to run, but my legs were already part of the mechanism, bone gears clicking in perfect rhythm with the countdown. The crying man was gone entirely now. In his place, a new number on the clock face. 11:59. I was heading for the same spot, the same transformation, becoming part of the eternal menage that led to the midnight that never arrived. 4, 3. My phone was still in my hand, still buzzing, and I looked at it one last time. The screen had changed. Instead of 11:58 p.m., it now read, "Thank you for celebrating with us. The new year will begin shortly." I didn't press it. I didn't have to. My finger was already moving, had been moving through every loop, would always be moving toward that button because I'd already pressed it the moment I'd decided to come here, to this place, seeking some kind of validation that I was okay, that I could move forward, that I could face a new year alone. 1. Happy New. The countdown stopped mid-word. Everything stopped. And then, slowly, impossibly, The clock began ticking backward. 11:57 p.m., 11:56 p.m., 11:55 p.m. I'm still here. We're all still here. The knot keeps growing, pulling in more people every year. Everyone who stands in Times Square and wishes midnight would last forever. Everyone who's too afraid to let the old year die. My phone says it's 11:43 p.m. now. I've been here for 9 months. The crying man passed 11 o'clock p.m. last week and started coming apart into individual seconds, each one screaming. I'm trying to hold on to who I am, but it's hard when your name is becoming a time and your body is becoming a machine. And the only thing that exists is the eternal approach toward a midnight that will never, ever arrive. The worst part? Every December 31st, I can feel new people joining us. They stand in the same spot I stood. They wear the same name tags. They experience the same loops. And somewhere, on the surface, in the world that still moves forward, people watch the ball drop and think it's beautiful. They have no idea they're looking down at us. The party at the end of the world. I found the invitation in my mailbox at 9:47 p.m. on December 31st, 2022, which should have been my first warning because mail doesn't get delivered on New Year's Eve, and I definitely hadn't checked my mailbox in 3 days. The envelope was black, expensive feeling, and sealed with actual wax. A red impression of a clock with no hands. Inside, in silver ink that seemed to move slightly when I wasn't looking directly at it. You are cordially invited to celebrate the end of everything. Midnight, 12:47, Ashwood Lane. I'm Detective Marcus Webb, Chicago PD, 41 years old, divorced, and spending New Year's Eve alone for the 3rd year running because my ex-wife got the friends in the separation and my partner had a family, and I'd told everyone I was fine working the holiday shift, even though I'd requested it off. The invitation felt like a lifeline, even though every instinct I'd honed over 18 years in homicide was screaming that something was wrong with it. 12:47, Ashwood Lane was in Gold Coast. The kind of neighborhood where houses cost more than I'd make in 5 lifetimes. I'd driven past that address 100 times and never seen anything there except an empty lot. Overgrown with weeds, surrounded by a rusted iron fence. But when I pulled up at 11:23 p.m., there was a house. Not just any house, a mansion, 3 stories of Victorian Gothic architecture that absolutely had not existed 6 hours ago when I'd driven this exact route for a wellness check. Every window blazed with warm light. Music poured out, something classical and strange, with too many instruments playing at once. People in formal wear drifted past the windows like beautiful ghosts. I should have left. I should have called it in. But I'm an idiot, and I was lonely. And the invitation was still warm in my pocket, like it had a heartbeat. The front door opened before I could knock. A woman stood there, maybe 60 years old, wearing a black dress that looked like it cost more than my car. Her smile was perfect, too perfect. Like she'd practiced it for so long it had stopped being connected to any actual emotion. "Detective Webb," she said, and her voice had the same quality as the music, just slightly wrong, slightly too layered. "We've been expecting you." "Everyone who matters." She stepped aside. "Please." The entrance hall was impossibly large, stretching back farther than the exterior of the house should have allowed. Chandeliers hung from a ceiling I couldn't quite focus on. It seemed to recede upward forever, or maybe fold in on itself. Dozens of people milled about in evening wear, champagne flutes in hand, chatting and laughing. I recognized some of them immediately, and that's when my blood went cold. Daniel Morrison, talking animatedly to a woman I didn't know, wearing the same suit he'd been buried in. I'd worked his murder, domestic violence gone wrong, boyfriend strangled him, and dumped the body in the river. I'd been at his funeral 8 months ago. Yolanda Price, dancing alone in the corner, her throat still bearing the ligature marks from her suicide. I'd cut her down myself, too late, 3 years back. Tommy Chen, Melissa Rodriguez, Dr. Abraham Okonkwo, all of them dead. All of them cases I'd worked. And all of them looking at me now with the same 2 bright eyes, the same 2 wide smiles. I backed toward the door, hand going to my service weapon. The woman in black touched my arm. Her fingers were ice cold through my jacket. "A party, detective. The last party." She gestured to the room. "In one way or another, moving through our lives like ghosts, already mourning what we haven't lost yet." A grandfather clock in the corner chimed once. 11:30 p.m. "You have 30 minutes, the woman said. "Everyone does." Her smile widened, and I saw that her teeth went back too far, row after row of them, disappearing into her throat. "When midnight comes, detective, one of 2 things will happen. You'll either return to your life, having learned something valuable about the nature of mortality and the choices that bind us." She walked away, her dress trailing behind her like smoke, and I was left standing in a room full of the dead while my heart hammered against my ribs. Tommy Chen approached me, champagne in hand. Up close, I could see the bullet wound in his temple, the one from the convenience store robbery that had gone wrong. It was weeping slightly, clear fluid mixing with the champagne dripping from the glass he held at an odd angle. "Marcus," he said warmly, like we were old friends. "I'm glad you came. For finding him." Tommy's smile was genuine, or at least it seemed that way, until you noticed his eyes were looking in slightly different directions. "You closed my case, gave my family closure. You're not real." He sipped his champagne. The fluid leaked out through the bullet hole running down his neck. "We're all as real as the attention you paid us. Every case you worked, every victim you spoke for, you gave us weight, shape. We became more than just bodies. More of them were gathering now. All my cases, all my dead. A teenage girl whose remains I'd found scattered across 3 counties, an elderly man who'd been beaten to death for the $18 in his wallet. A young mother who'd been shot in a drive-by meant for someone else. They surrounded me in a circle, their wounds on display, their deaths visible in the gray pallor of their skin, the stiffness of their movements, the wrongness of their presences. "We want to give you a gift," Yolanda said, and her voice whistled slightly through her crushed larynx. "I don't want to see. You've spent 18 years staring at death," the woman in black said, suddenly beside me again, looking for answers in the aftermath, trying to make sense of the senseless. "Don't you want to know the truth?" The clock chimed again. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes, detective." They led me deeper into the house, through rooms that couldn't possibly exist, down hallways that turned at angles that hurt my brain to perceive. The music followed us, growing louder, more discordant, until I realized it wasn't music at all. It was screaming. Thousands of voices layered and harmonized into something almost beautiful. We entered a ballroom. It was massive, its walls lined with mirrors that reflected not the room we were in, but other rooms, other places. Crime scenes. Every single case I'd ever worked, all of them playing out simultaneously in the glass. I could see myself, younger, crouching over Daniel Morrison's body. See myself cutting down Yolanda Price. See myself vomiting in the alley behind the convenience store after processing Tommy Chen's murder. "This is what you carry," the woman in black said softly. Every death, every victim. In 7 minutes, it will stop. In 7 minutes, midnight will arrive, and you'll have to choose. Keep carrying them. Keep investigating death. Keep trying to make sense of the senseless. She gestured to the center of the ballroom. There was a door there, freestanding, ornate, with no walls around it. Through the keyhole, I could see light. Pure, clean, white light that made my eyes water. "Walk through that door," she said, "and you'll understand everything. Every death you've investigated, every question you've asked, every sleepless night wondering if you did enough, if you were fast enough, if you could have saved one more. All of it answered." She said it simply, matter-of-factly. "You cross that threshold, detective, and you become like us. Not alive, not dead, but something in between. A witness. An eternal investigator." The clock chimed. 11:50 p.m. 10 minutes. I walked toward the door. I couldn't help myself. Every case I'd ever failed, every victim I'd been too late for, every killer who'd gotten away. They were all watching me from the mirrors. And I wanted so badly to understand, to finally know, to have answers instead of questions. My hand touched the doorknob. It was warm, almost alive. I turned. My ex-wife, Sandra, stood at the edge of the ballroom. She wasn't dead. At least, she hadn't been when I'd last called her. Drunk 3 weeks ago, rambling about how I couldn't sleep because I kept seeing faces. "Sandra, what are you—" "I got an invitation too," she said quietly. 3 years ago, the night our marriage ended. I almost walked through that door, Marcus. I almost gave up. Because the dead don't need us to understand them. They need us to remember them, to keep living for them." She walked toward me. "You think going through that door will give you answers? But all it'll give you is an eternity of questions. Because death isn't something you solve, Marcus." The clock chimed. 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes. "Choose," the woman in black whispered. I looked at the door, at the light beyond it, at the promise of understanding. Then I looked at Sandra, at the slight dark circles under her eyes that meant she hadn't been sleeping well either. At the way she was holding herself, arms wrapped around her torso, protecting herself from whatever she'd seen when she'd been invited to this party 3 years ago. I asked. "The same way you came in," the woman said. There was something like disappointment in her voice. "Walk out the front door. But know this, detective, we'll keep inviting you. Every New Year's Eve, every moment you're weak enough to want answers more than life." The clock chimed. Midnight. The room exploded into celebration. Confetti fell from nowhere. The dead cheered and drank and danced, their wounds flowering into black flowers, their faces shifting between what they'd been and what they'd become. I grabbed Sandra's hand and ran. We burst through the front door and onto the lawn, and behind us, the house was gone. Just an empty lot, overgrown weeds, rusted fence. My phone buzzed with a dozen New Year's messages. Sandra was crying. "I see them sometimes," she whispered. "The other guests. The ones who stayed. They're everywhere, Marcus. They're in every crowd, every party, every celebration. Still stuck at midnight." I held her while she cried. And over her shoulder, I saw something that made my blood freeze. In the empty lot, just for a moment, I saw a figure in a black dress. The woman. She raised her champagne flute in a mock toast. I still got the invitation. I got it on December 31st, 2023. Same envelope, same wax seal, same message except for one difference. You are cordially invited to celebrate the end of everything. Midnight, 1247 Ashwood Lane. Come as you are now at S. Sandra will be joining us this year. I'm holding it now. It's 11:37 p.m. I have 23 minutes to decide if I'm going back. And the worst part is, I'm already putting on my coat. The broadcast that never stopped. The emergency broadcast signal interrupted the New Year's countdown at 11:54 p.m. And at first, I thought it was a prank because who the hell interrupts New Year's Eve programming with a test of the emergency broadcast system? But the tone kept going, that awful flat screech that makes your teeth hurt. And then a voice came on. Calm, professional, wrong. This is not a test. Please remain in your homes. Do not look at the sky. Do not answer your door. Midnight has been delayed indefinitely. Then static. Then nothing. Then the countdown resumed like nothing had happened. Ryan Seacrest's smile plastered across the screen. The crowd in Times Square cheering. I'm Tasha Williams, 28 years old, and I was sitting alone in my apartment in Portland, Oregon, watching the New Year's broadcast because my boyfriend had broken up with me on December 20th. And all my friends were at parties I hadn't been invited to, and I'd convinced myself that this was fine, that I liked being alone, that I was the kind of person who didn't need validation from others. The broadcast signal had terrified me in a way I couldn't articulate. Something about the voice, the strange flatness of it, the way it had said, midnight has been delayed, like that was a normal thing that could happen. I grabbed my phone to check social media to see if anyone else had seen it. Nothing. Everyone was posting their New Year's preparations, champagne bottles, party photos, countdown screenshots. Not a single mention of the emergency broadcast. I called my sister in Boston. Rachel, did you see? See what? I'm at a party, Tash. Can this wait? The emergency broadcast, on TV. It just interrupted the There wasn't any emergency broadcast. Are you okay? Rachel sighed. You're obsessing again. Remember when you were convinced someone was living in your walls? You need to get out more, babe. Maybe come to this party. There's still time before... The call dropped. All the lights in my apartment went out simultaneously. Then my TV flickered back on, impossibly bright in the darkness. And it was showing the emergency broadcast again, except this time, the voice was different. Still calm. Still professional. But underneath, I could hear something else. Breathing. Wet, heavy breathing. This is not a test. Midnight has been delayed by approximately 6 minutes. Do not attempt to leave your home. Do not look at the sky. Do not answer your door. Do not answer your phone. Do not trust anyone who claims not to have seen this message. They are not who they were. The screen went black. My apartment stayed dark. Outside, I could hear other people in my building moving around. Confused voices, doors opening, someone laughing nervously. I went to my window and looked out at the street below. It was 11:56 p.m. according to my phone. 4 minutes to midnight. The street should have been full of people heading to or from parties, but it was completely empty. Every streetlight was off. Every building was dark except for the occasional window glowing with phone screens or laptop light. And in the sky above the city, there was something wrong. I can't describe it properly. It wasn't a shape or an object or even really visible in the traditional sense. It was more like an absence. A place where the stars should have been, but weren't. A spot where your eyes just sort of slid away if you looked too long. Where the darkness was somehow darker than the rest of the night. "Don't look at the sky," the broadcast had said. I was looking at the sky. My phone buzzed. 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes to midnight. The TV turned itself on again. This time, there was no emergency broadcast tone. Just a camera feed, shaky and dark, showing what looked like someone's living room. A family, mom, dad, 2 kids, sitting on a couch, staring at their own TV. All of them perfectly still. All of them with their mouths hanging open slightly, like they were waiting for something. Then the camera moved, and I realized with a jolt of horror that I was looking at my neighbor's apartment. The Hendersons. I'd been to their place for a building barbecue last summer. That was their couch, their TV, their family. And they were just sitting there, not moving, not blinking. The camera feed changed. Another apartment, another family frozen in front of their TV. Then another, and another. I saw my entire building, every apartment, every resident sitting or standing in front of screens, all of them motionless, all of them waiting. Then the camera showed my apartment. Showed me standing at the window, phone in hand, staring at the screen. But I was still, not moving. My face was slack, expressionless, my eyes unfocused. I looked down at my hand, at my phone. At the time, 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes to midnight. I was moving, I was breathing, I was terrified. But on the screen, I was frozen like everyone else. The voice came back, and this time it was whispering. "Do you understand now? Midnight isn't coming. Midnight has been purchased. The moment of transition, the second when one year becomes another, the instant of collective hope and renewal. It's been bought and paid for." My TV screen split into dozens of feeds now, hundreds of them, showing cities all over the world. New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney. Everywhere, people frozen in front of screens, waiting for midnight. "You're one of the few who can still move," the voice said. One of the few who saw the warning and looked anyway. One of the few who broke the spell. 11:59 p.m. 1 minute. The thing in the sky was growing. Or maybe I was finally able to see it properly. It wasn't an absence anymore. It was a presence, vast and hungry, pressing down on the city like a massive hand. I could feel its weight in my chest, in my bones, a horrible pressure that made it hard to breathe. 60 seconds, the voice whispered. 59. I ran to my door, yanked it open. The hallway was full of people, all of them standing perfectly still, all of them facing their apartment doors, all of them with that same slack expression. Mrs. Chen from 4B, Tyler and his boyfriend from 4D, the college kids from 4A who played music too loud, all frozen, all waiting. 47, 46. I ran down the stairs, 3 flights, my footsteps echoing in the unnatural silence. Burst through the front door and onto the street. Portland was a photograph. Cars stopped in the middle of the road, drivers visible through windshields, all motionless. A couple frozen mid-kiss on the corner. A group of drunk people turned into statues, champagne bottles raised. And above them, the thing in the sky was opening. 32, 31. I could see inside it now, see into the absence. And what I saw made me understand why the broadcast had warned us not to look. It was full of midnights. Every New Year's midnight that had ever happened, all of them pressed together, all of them replaying simultaneously. I could see celebrations from decades ago, centuries ago, thousands of years of humanity marking the moment of transition. And they were all happening at once in that impossible space above the city. And something was feeding on them. 2019. I fell to my knees. I couldn't help it. The pressure from above was crushing, forcing me down, and I realized with perfect horror that this was what the broadcast had been trying to prevent. As long as we didn't look, as long as we stayed frozen in front of our screens, we were protected. But now I'd seen, and seeing meant being exposed, being vulnerable. 10, 9. The thing began to descend. I could see its edges now, the way it bent the air around itself, the way reality cracked and splintered where it touched. It was enormous, impossible, and it was heading straight for the frozen people in the street. 7, 6. I tried to run, but I couldn't move. The pressure had me pinned, forced me to watch as the thing settled over the city like a blanket, covering everything, touching everyone. The frozen people began to smile. 4, 3. All at once, they turned their heads toward me. Every single person on the street, every person visible through windows, all of them moving in perfect synchronization, all of them still smiling that horrible, empty smile. Midnight arrived. The thing in the sky consumed it. And I understood finally what the broadcast had meant when it said midnight had been purchased. This is what happens to moments of collective joy. This is what feeds on human hope. This is what waits at every threshold, every celebration, every instant when we're all looking forward together. It eats the future. The people started moving again, but they were wrong. Their movements were slightly too fast, slightly too smooth, like puppets being jerked around by invisible strings. They came towards me still smiling, still speaking in unison. Thank you for witnessing. Thank you for seeing. My phone buzzed. I looked down. The time read 11:59 p.m., 1 minute to midnight. No, I whispered. No, it already happened, the unified voices asked. Or did you just watch it be taken? Midnight has been delayed indefinitely, remember? And now you get to wait for it forever. You and everyone else. The people were surrounding me now, their wrong movements bringing them closer, their smiles never faltering. You'll watch midnight almost happen for the rest of eternity, they said. You'll count down with everyone else, over and over, billions of times. And you'll never get to experience the transition. You'll never get to feel the hope of a new year. My TV was still on back in my apartment. I could see it through the window, see the emergency broadcast playing on every screen in every building. This is not a test. I'm still here. We're all still here. It's been what feels like months. But my phone still says 11:59 p.m. The countdown plays on TV constantly now. Ryan Seacrest's face frozen in mid-word, the ball suspended inches from the bottom of its drop, the crowd captured in the instant before celebration. We count down together, over and over. 10, 9, 8. We never reach one. The thing in the sky is still there, still feeding, still growing fat on the midnight that will never come. And sometimes, on every screen, the broadcast changes its message. Thank you for your patience. Midnight will resume when we've finished. The Resolution Keeper. I signed the contract at 11:47 p.m. on December 31st, 2022, because the woman at the bar promised me that this year could be different, that I could actually keep my New Year's resolutions, that she could guarantee it. All I had to do was write down what I wanted to change and sign my name. My name is Jacob Torres. I'm 36 years old, And I've broken every New Year's resolution I've made for the past 14 years. Lose weight, get sober, call my mom more, stop gambling, exercise daily, be a better person. Every single year, I'd start strong, January 1st, full of determination, and by January 9th, I'd have failed completely. The gym membership unused, the beer fridge restocked, my mom's calls going to voicemail. This year, I'd promised myself it would be different. This year, I'd written my resolutions down early, made them specific, told my friends I was finally going to change. And then December 20th rolled around, and I'd blown $300 on scratch tickets, and I realized I was exactly the same piece of shit I'd always been. So when the woman approached me at McGinty's pub at 11:34 p.m. on New Year's Eve, when I was 6 drinks deep and contemplating just skipping the whole resolution thing entirely, I was desperate enough to listen. She was beautiful in an uncomfortable way, like looking at something too bright. Dark hair, gray suit, eyes that reflected the bar lights wrong, showing angles that shouldn't exist. "Jacob Torres," she said, sitting down without being invited. 14 consecutive years of broken resolutions. Someone who can help. I represent a service that specializes in accountability. You make a resolution, you sign a contract, we guarantee you'll keep it. I laughed. That's bullshit. We do. She slid a piece of paper across the bar. It was thick, expensive, with text printed in silver ink that seemed to shift when I looked at it. Write down your resolutions. Sign at the bottom. No catch. Her smile was too wide. If you fail to keep a resolution, we take something equivalent to what you've broken. Fail to lose weight? We take your hunger. Fail to stay sober? We take your ability to feel joy sober or drunk. Fail to call your mother? It's fair. You promised to change. We make sure you do. She checked her watch, an expensive thing that seemed to have too many hands, all moving in different directions. You have 13 minutes to decide. She left, just stood up and walked into the crowd and disappeared like she'd never been there. I looked at the contract, at the blank lines waiting for my resolutions. I was drunk. I was lonely. I was tired of being the guy who never followed through, the guy who disappointed everyone, including himself. And some part of me, the desperate, self-destructive part that had blown $300 on scratch tickets, thought maybe this was exactly what I needed. Someone, something to hold me accountable with stakes high enough to matter. I pulled out a pen. Resolution 1. Lose 30 pounds by June 1st. Resolution 2. Stop drinking completely. Resolution 3. Call mom every Sunday. Resolution 4. No gambling of any kind. Resolution 5. Exercise for 30 minutes every day. At the bottom, a signature line. And below that, in smaller text. By signing this contract, I acknowledge that I understand the consequences of failure and accept the terms of enforcement. I signed. The paper immediately went cold. So cold it burned my fingers, and then it burst into flames. Clean, silver flames that didn't spread to the bar, didn't create smoke, just consumed the contract in 3 seconds flat, and left nothing behind but a faint smell like burning metal. The woman was suddenly beside me again. "Congratulations." Then she was gone again, and I was alone with my drink and the growing, creeping horror of what I'd just done. At 11:59 p.m., I felt the first change. My body locked up, every muscle going rigid, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. Around me, people counted down to midnight, oblivious to my terror, and I felt something crawling under my skin, something rewriting me at a fundamental level. 10, 9. My flesh was burning, not from the outside, but from within, like something was taking root in my bones and spreading through my veins. 7, 6. I could feel it finding the resolutions, the promises I'd made, reading them like instructions, embedding them into my nervous system, my brain, my very cells. 4, 3. And then I understood what I'd done. Really understood. The resolutions weren't suggestions anymore. They were commands, absolute, unbreakable, written into my biology. 1. I could move again. I could breathe again. And I was different. The first 3 days were amazing. I woke up early, exercised exactly 30 minutes, felt no desire whatsoever for alcohol. I called my mom, we talked for an hour, and it felt good, natural. I walked past the liquor store without even looking, walked past the convenience store with its lottery ticket display without a second thought. By day 4, I'd lost 7 pounds. My friends were shocked. My mom was crying happy tears. I felt like I'd finally gotten my shit together. Day 8, I tried to skip my workout because I was tired from work. I couldn't. My body moved on its own. Putting on running shoes, heading to the gym, exercising for exactly 30 minutes while I screamed internally, trying to stop, trying to rest. But my muscles kept moving like they belonged to someone else. When the 30 minutes were up, I collapsed. And only then did I have control again. Day 12, a friend offered me a beer. I said no. He insisted. I reached for it. I wanted to be polite, wanted to take one sip just to be social. And my hand stopped an inch from the bottle, just froze in midair. I pulled harder. My arm didn't move. It was like trying to push through a concrete wall. My friend laughed nervously. I couldn't even force my hand to touch the bottle. Day 23, I forgot to call my mom. I'd been busy, stressed with work, and Sunday came and went, and I didn't pick up the phone. At 11:59 p.m., my body stood up from bed, walked to where I'd left my phone, and dialed her number. I tried to stop, tried to hang up. My fingers wouldn't obey. Mom's sleepy voice. "Jacob?" My mouth opened. Words came out. Not my words, or maybe they were, but I wasn't choosing them. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to call. We talked for 45 minutes while I cried silently, unable to control my own voice, unable to end the call. Forced to have a pleasant conversation while tears ran down my face. When she finally said goodbye, my body let me hang up and go back to bed. I tried to break the resolutions deliberately after that, tried to eat myself past the weight loss goal. But my stomach wouldn't accept the food. I'd vomit immediately, violently. Tried to force myself to drink, but my throat closed up, wouldn't swallow. Tried to skip workouts, but my body would move on its own. The consequences, I realized, weren't for failure. They were built into the keeping of the promises. I was losing my autonomy, my free will. Every day, I was less myself and more a thing that kept resolutions. By March, I'd achieved everything I'd promised. 30 pounds gone. Not a drop of alcohol in 3 months. Mom called every Sunday like clockwork. No gambling, daily exercise. I was miserable. My friends stopped inviting me places because I couldn't join them for drinks, couldn't be spontaneous. Had to exercise every day at exactly the same time, no matter what else was happening. My mom started worrying because my Sunday calls were so regular, so perfect, so identical week after week that she knew something was wrong. Work suffered because I was exhausted all the time, my body demanding perfect adherence to the resolutions, no matter how tired I was, how sick, how much I needed to focus on other things. In April, I tried to find the woman. Went back to McGinty's every night, asking about her, showing people a description. No one remembered her. The bartender said no one matching that description had ever been there. I tried to break the contract deliberately. Tried to fail so badly the consequences would trigger, and maybe that would end it. I bought a bottle of whiskey, put it on my coffee table, stared at it for 3 hours, trying to force my hand to reach out, to grab it, to open it, and drink. My arm wouldn't move. I went to the convenience store, pulled out my wallet to buy scratch tickets. My hand wouldn't open my wallet. I wanted to fail. God, I wanted to fail so badly. Because at least then I'd have the consequences, have something taken away, and maybe that would be better than this. This perfect, enforced success that was hollowing me out from the inside. June first arrived. I'd kept every resolution perfectly. I'd lost exactly 30 pounds. I hadn't touched alcohol. I'd called my mom every Sunday. I'd exercised every single day. And I hadn't been in control of my own life for 5 months. That night, at 11:58 p.m., she appeared in my apartment. Just materialized in my living room, same gray suit, same too bright wrongness. "Congratulations," she said. "You've successfully kept your resolutions." "End it," I gasped. "Please just end it. Take it back. I can't." "The contract is complete," she repeated, "which means you've proven you can keep these promises, that you have the strength, the discipline, the commitment." She held out another contract. Double or nothing. More resolutions, higher stakes. What rewards? You've turned yourself into a better person. The puppet strings are just training wheels. Eventually, you'll internalize these behaviors. They'll become natural. I'll never sign another fucking... "The alternative," she said quietly, "is that we remove the compulsions, give you back your free will." Hope surged through me. Yes, that... But consider, in the 5 months since you signed, you've accomplished more than in the previous 14 years combined. You've made your mother happy, improved your health, saved money. If we remove the compulsions, how long until you backslide? I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I'd keep going on my own. But I knew the truth. I'd failed for 14 years. Without the contract forcing me, I'd fail again. I whispered, "You decide what kind of person you want to be." She checked her watch again. "You have 2 minutes. At midnight, the compulsions end, and you'll be on your own." I looked at the paper in her hand, at the blank lines waiting for new resolutions. Better resolutions. Be a better son, find a partner, get promoted at work, save money, be happy, be happy. Could she make me be happy? Could I sign away my free will and let the contract force me to feel joy, contentment, fulfillment? 1 minute, she said. I reached for the contract. I pulled back, reached again. My hand was shaking. I thought about the last 5 months, the perfect adherence, the loss of control, the growing horror of not being the one driving my own life. But I also thought about the 14 years before, the constant failure, the disappointment, the self-hatred. I grabbed the pen. I pressed it to paper. The pen froze in my hand. Not because of the contract, because I'd made a choice. I threw the pen across the room. Midnight struck. The compulsions vanished. I felt them leave like chains falling away, and suddenly I was just me again, tired, flawed, weak me, with all my bad habits and broken promises and capacity for failure. The woman smiled sadly. "Interesting choice. We'll see you next year, Jacob." When you failed again. When you're desperate again. She disappeared. That was 9 months ago. I gained back 15 pounds, started drinking again, missed 3 Sunday calls with my mom, bought scratchers twice. But I also went back to the gym voluntarily once last week. Called my mom on a Wednesday just because I wanted to hear her voice. Turned down a drink at a party and felt proud of myself. I'm failing. I'm succeeding. I'm human. And last week, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Thick paper, silver ink. I burned it, but I kept the ashes because I know myself. I know my weaknesses. And I know that one of these years, when things get bad enough, when I hate myself thoroughly enough, I'll be tempted to gather up those ashes, tape the contract back together, and sign. The woman was right. I'll see her again. And the worst part is, I'm not sure if I'll be strong enough to say no. The house that celebrated wrong. The first thing I noticed about the New Year's Eve party at 2847 Blackwood Drive was that everyone was wearing the same watch and every watch showed a different time. The second thing I noticed was that some of the guests were translucent around the edges, like they weren't completely there. And the third thing, the thing that should have made me turn around and leave, was that I'd seen the house burn down 6 years ago. I'm Emma Castellanos, 24 years old, and I'd been driving home from a disappointing New Year's Eve party at my ex-girlfriend's place when I'd gotten lost. GPS kept rerouting, telling me to make turns onto streets that didn't exist, and eventually, I'd ended up in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, despite living in Sacramento my entire life. The house at 2847 Blackwood was massive, Victorian, lit up with warm light pouring from every window. Music drifted out, something old-fashioned, maybe jazz from the 20s or 30s. People in formal wear were visible through the windows, laughing, dancing, having the kind of glamorous party that doesn't happen anymore. I was about to drive past when a woman appeared in my headlights. She was wearing a flapper dress, complete with pearls and a feathered headband, and she was waving at me frantically. I stopped, rolled down my window. "Thank God," she gasped. "I need help. My husband, he's inside and something's wrong with him, and I can't get him to leave, and..." She looked over her shoulder at the house, and I saw genuine terror on her face. "Please." "The party ends," she whispered, "and everyone who's still inside when it ends, they don't leave." She grabbed my hand through the window. Her fingers were ice cold. She asked. She let out a sob. "Oh, God. Oh, God, we've been here since 1976. She looked at her watch. It showed 11:43 p.m. "We have 17 minutes. I should have driven away. But her fear was so genuine, her desperation so raw, and I've never been good at ignoring people who need help, even when every instinct screams danger. I parked and followed her to the house. Up close, I could see the wrongness more clearly. The house looked perfect, but it was slightly too perfect, like a photograph that had been retouched too much. The paint was too fresh, the windows too clean, and underneath, like a double exposure, I could see burn marks, charred wood, collapsed walls. The skeleton of the house that had actually burned down in 2017. The woman, she said her name was Margaret, led me up the front steps. "Don't eat anything, don't drink anything, don't tell anyone your full name. And whatever you do, don't agree to stay for just one more minute after midnight." "Maintenant, messieurs." She pushed open the front door before I could get an answer. The party inside was in full swing. Dozens of people in period costumes spanning decades. Flappers from the 20s, zoot suits from the 40s, poodle skirts from the 50s, bell-bottoms from the 70s, shoulder pads from the 80s. All of them wearing those watches. All of them showing different times. And all of them celebrating like it was the best night of their lives. A man in a 1950s suit approached me with a champagne flute. "Welcome. You're just in time for the countdown." I didn't take the drink. I'm just here to help someone. His smile never wavered. That's what everyone says. Just here to help. Just staying a moment. He leaned in close, and I could see that his eyes were wrong. Pupils shaped like clock hands, ticking backward. "But it's always longer than you think." Margaret pulled me away, dragging me through the crowd. I caught glimpses as we moved. A woman whose dress was rotting off her body while she danced, patches of exposed bone visible through decomposing flesh. A man laughing with a group, his mouth opening too wide, showing rows of teeth that went back forever. Children playing in a corner, their movements jerky and too fast, like film with missing frames. "There," Margaret pointed. "That's Daniel." He was in the center of a group, telling some animated story, and he looked completely normal, except for the watch on his wrist, which showed 11:47 p.m. Different from everyone else's. Different from Margaret's 11:43. Margaret called. He looked over, and his face lit up. "Margaret, there you are. I was just telling everyone about the time we—" He stopped, confusion crossing his face. "Have you been crying?" "We've been here for 47 years, she said desperately. "We're trapped," he laughed. "We just got here." He checked his watch. "It's 11:47. That's what your watch says. Look at mine. Look at everyone's. We're all stuck in different times, Daniel. The party is keeping us here, making us forget, making us think we just arrived, when really—" A clock on the mantel chimed, not quite right. The chime was layered, like dozens of bells ringing slightly out of sync. Then they resumed their conversations, like nothing had happened. Margaret grabbed her husband's arm. "That's not normal. None of this is normal. Please, Daniel, you have to remember. We came here in 1976 for a New Year's Eve party. We were going to stay 1 hour, just 1 hour, because we had to get home to the babysitter, remember? Jennifer was only 4 years old, and we left her with your mother and—" Daniel's face changed. The pleasant confusion was replaced with dawning horror. "Jennifer. Oh, God. Jennifer's birthday is— She had a birthday while we were—" He looked around wildly. "I don't know anymore. My watch says it's been 4 hours. Your watch says it's been just under an hour. But that woman—" Margaret pointed at me. "She says it's 2023. Our daughter is 51 years old now, Daniel." I saw him break. Saw the reality of what had happened crash over him. "We have to leave, right now." The man in the 50s suit was back, and now I could see that several other party guests had formed a circle around us. All of them smiling, all of them with those backward-ticking clock hand pupils. "The party's just getting started." "Let us leave," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Everyone's part of this," a woman in a flapper dress said sweetly. "Everyone who comes to the house, everyone who walks through the door. Don't you understand? This is the party that never ends, the celebration that goes on forever." "Because it's not real," Margaret said. "Because you're all trapped." The circle of guests moved closer. Their smiles were too wide now, their teeth too sharp. "The house demands celebration," the 50s man said. "The house was built on celebration, lives on celebration, breathes celebration." Every New Year's Eve for the past 140 years, it's thrown the greatest party in Sacramento. I looked around desperately for an exit. The front door was visible, maybe 20 feet away, but the crowd had thickened, bodies pressing in from all sides. The clock chimed again. Everyone froze and spoke except us. When they resumed, they were closer, their circle tighter. "You can run," the flapper woman said. "But you won't make it to the door. Not before midnight. And once midnight strikes, well..." She gestured around the room. "Look at all these wonderful people. Do they seem unhappy? They're celebrating forever. No more worry about the future. No more fear of aging." I looked closer at the other guests. Really looked. They weren't happy. Beneath the forced smiles, their eyes were screaming. The woman whose flesh was rotting was trying to hide it, holding her arms behind her back so no one could see the exposed bone. The man with too many teeth was crying, even as he laughed. The children in the corner weren't playing. They were running the same pattern over and over, like wind-up toys stuck in a loop. I asked. "You don't," the 50s man said. "No one does. The house only has one door, and it only opens to let people in, never out. At least not until..." The clock chimed. This time, when they resumed, the smiles were gone. The pretense was dropping. The party guests' faces were changing, becoming more skeletal, their formal wear rotting into grave clothes. "5 minutes," Margaret breathed. "Emma, you need to run. Now, get to the door before midnight. Maybe it'll let you..." "What about you? We've been here too long, our watches. They've absorbed too much of the house's time. We're part of it now, but you just got here. Maybe you can..." Daniel grabbed my arm. His grip was weak, his skin papery and thin like he'd aged decades in seconds. "Save our daughter. Tell her we loved her. Tell her we never meant to leave. Tell her..." The lights went out. In the darkness, I heard whispers. Hundreds of voices, all counting down. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. I ran, crashed through the circle of guests. They grabbed at me, their fingers cold and impossibly strong, their whispers following. "Stay, celebrate. It's almost midnight." I slammed into the front door, grabbed the handle, pulled. It didn't budge. 2 minutes, the house whispered. And I realized it was the house itself talking. The walls and floors and ceiling all speaking in unison. 2 minutes until midnight. 2 minutes until the year turns over and everyone who's still inside becomes part of the celebration. Behind me, Margaret screamed. I turned and saw her aging rapidly, decades passing in seconds, her flapper dress rotting off her body, her skin withering, her hair going white then falling out. Daniel was beside her, experiencing the same horrible transformation, both of them crying and reaching for each other as they became the thing the house wanted. Eternal guests, forever celebrating, forever trapped. I kicked the door, punched it, threw my whole body against it. The wood didn't even creak. The party guests surrounded me. They weren't pretending anymore. Their costumes had rotted completely, revealing the corpses underneath, some fresh, some ancient, all of them trapped and celebrating and desperately miserable. "Please," one of them whispered. "Please, if you get out, tell them. Tell everyone. The house at 28 and 47 Blackwood. It's been throwing parties since 1883. We're all still here. All of us. Tell someone to burn it down." I remembered what Margaret had said. The house only has one door. But that wasn't true. Houses have windows. I grabbed a chair and threw it at the nearest window. The glass didn't break. The chair bounced off like the window was made of steel. 10 seconds. 9. The corpses were closing in, their hands outstretched, their mouths forming words. Join us. Celebrate. 7. 6. I closed my eyes. Thought about Margaret and Daniel. About 47 years stolen. About a daughter who'd grown up without parents. Thought about the lie at the heart of the party. That celebration could last forever, that joy could be eternal, that you could freeze a perfect moment and live in it always. 4. 3. The clock struck midnight. The door burst open. I don't know why, don't know how. But in that instant, when the year changed and the house claimed everyone inside, something broke. Some rule, some binding. The door flew open and I fell through it, tumbling down the front steps and onto the lawn. Behind me, the party erupted in cheers. But the voices were wrong. Layered with decades of celebration, hundreds of people screaming in joy and terror. I ran to my car, looked back at the house. It was burning again. Or still burning. Or had always been burning. The flames were the same ones from 2017, the same fire that had supposedly destroyed it. Except now I could see they weren't destroying anything. They were part of the celebration. Part of the eternal party, flickering in the windows like candles on a birthday cake that would never be blown out. I drove. My phone said it was 12:03 a.m., January 1st, 2023. GPS worked again. I found my way home. The next day, I looked up the house's history. Found the news story about the fire in 2017 that had killed 17 people during a New Year's Eve party. Found older stories. A fire in 1983 that killed 9. A fire in 1953 that killed 14. Going back and back, every 20 to 30 years, another fire, another tragedy, another batch of people trapped celebrating. But the house was never destroyed. It always came back. Always hosted another party, always waited for midnight. I found Jennifer Morrison, Margaret and Daniel's daughter. She's a grandmother now, living in Portland. And when I called her and told her about her parents, she cried for an hour straight. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. They visited me on my 30th birthday. Showed up at my house dressed exactly like they were the night they disappeared. Said they'd been at a party and lost track of time. They looked exactly the same, hadn't aged a day. They stayed for an hour, told me they loved me, and then left. Said they had to get back to the party. 2006. The house lets them out sometimes, for an hour, to visit loved ones. To pretend everything's normal. Then it pulls them back for another year of celebration. I'm writing this on December 31st, 2023. It's 11:34 p.m., and I can see it on my GPS, 2847 Blackwood Drive, showing up on the map even though it shouldn't exist. The party's starting again, and somewhere, Margaret and Daniel are putting on their formal wear, checking their watches, and getting ready to celebrate another new year that will never arrive. The kiss at midnight. I almost deleted it. Another creep. Another guy who thought being forward was the same as being charming. But then he sent a photo, and I stopped breathing because I'd been dreaming about this man for 3 months straight. My name is Zoe Park. I'm 29 years old, and ever since October, I'd been having the same dream every single night. A man I'd never met, standing in Times Square, searching the crowd desperately. And when he found me, he'd say, "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." In the dreams, I'd always wake up before midnight. Always wake up with this crushing sense of loss. Like I'd failed at something critically important. And now he was here, on my phone, real. His name was Adrian Cross, 31 years old, and his second message said, "I know how this sounds. I know you think I'm insane. But I've been dreaming about you since September. And in every dream, you're the one. The one I'm supposed to find. The one I'm supposed to kiss when the year changes. Please tell me you know what I'm talking about." I stared at my phone for 3 full minutes, my heart hammering. This was impossible. This was a scam, a catfish, some elaborate prank. But I typed, "Times Square. You're looking for me in a crowd." The 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared immediately. Then, oh my God, it's real. You're real. Sacramento. Denver. Fuck. How do we need to be together at midnight. The dream, it's not just a dream, Zoe. I think it's a warning or instructions. Or, I don't know what it is, but I know it's important. I should have blocked him. Should have reported the profile. Should have done anything except what I did, which was, I can get to San Francisco by 11:45 if I drive fast. Can you fly? Already booking a flight. I can be there by 11:52 if the plane's on time. Meet me there, please. I drove like a woman possessed, 80 miles an hour down Interstate 80, my phone giving me updates on Adrian's flight status. He'd made it to the airport. He'd boarded. The plane was taxiing. And the entire drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was racing towards something enormous. Something that would fundamentally change everything. At 11:38 p.m., he texted, "Plane's delayed on the runway. Won't take off until 11:45. My heart sank. But I was already entering San Francisco, already heading toward the ferry building where people were gathering for the midnight celebration. "I'll be there," I typed. Maybe just being in the same city is enough. Maybe the dreams will..." My phone buzzed with a call. "Adrian," I answered. "It's not enough," he said without preamble. His voice was exactly like in the dreams. Rough, urgent, terrified. I just had another flash of the dream. But this time I saw more. "What?" "The year doesn't turn over. Not for us. We stay stuck in December 31st forever, repeating it, living it over and over, always trying to reach each other, but never making it in time. And every loop, we lose a piece of ourselves until there's nothing left but the desire to reach each other, to complete this one moment. And we become God, Zoe. We become ghosts, searching forever." I pulled over. My hands were shaking too badly to drive. "That's not possible." "Tell that to the dreams," his voice cracked. "The plane just took off. I'm tracking the flight. If we're lucky, if there's no delays landing, if I can get off the plane fast enough, if traffic isn't too bad, I might make it by 12:07 a.m. But that's too late." Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Do you believe in us? In these dreams?" "I don't know." "Then go to the ferry building. Stand right in the middle of the celebration. And at midnight, close your eyes and kiss the air where I should be standing. Kiss the space I'm supposed to occupy. And I'll do the same thing, on the plane, surrounded by strangers who'll think I've lost my mind. Everything about this is crazy." The call ended. Whether he hung up or I did, or the connection just dropped, I don't know. I drove to the ferry building in a daze. The crowd was massive. Hundreds of people packed into the plaza, all of them counting down the final minutes of the year. I pushed through them, searching for... what? Adrian wasn't here, wouldn't be here. I was looking for an empty space, a spot where he should be standing but wasn't. And I found it. In the exact center of the crowd, there was a gap. Not a physical gap, people were standing there, but a space that felt empty anyway, a spot that my eyes kept sliding toward, even though there was nothing remarkable about it. I pushed through until I was standing in that space. My phone buzzed. 11:58 p.m. A text from Adrian. "I'm doing this. I believe in us. 2 minutes." The crowd started counting down. I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I could see him. Not like in the dreams. This was different. More real. More immediate. Adrian standing on an airplane, eyes closed, surrounded by concerned passengers, his lips moving in silent countdown. I could feel him. Feel his presence like a warmth in the cold night air. Like he was standing right in front of me even though he was thousands of feet in the air. 9! This was insane. This was impossible. This was 7, the most real thing I'd ever experienced. 5. I reached out with my hand, felt the air where his face should be, traced the invisible contours of his cheek, his jaw. 3. And I felt him do the same. Felt invisible fingers touching my face. Gentle and desperate and real, despite being impossible. Midnight. I leaned forward and kissed the empty air. The world inverted. I can't describe it better than that. Everything flipped. Inside became outside, up became down, and I was falling through space, except space was falling through me. And I could feel every version of this moment happening simultaneously. The timeline where I'd deleted his message. The timeline where his plane had crashed. The timeline where we'd met in person but felt nothing. The timeline where we'd become ghosts, searching forever. All of them collapsed into this single moment, this single kiss. When I opened my eyes, Adrian was standing in front of me. Physically there, solid, real. His eyes wide with shock, his lips parted, his hands still raised to touch my face. "How?" I started. "I don't know," he whispered. "I was on the plane." I kissed the air. Around us, people were cheering, celebrating, oblivious to the impossibility that had just occurred. I asked. "I think..." Adrian looked around, at the celebrating crowd, at the midnight sky, at our hands now intertwined. "I think we were supposed to meet, not in the normal way, not through chance or coincidence. We were supposed to meet in defiance of reality itself." He gestured to himself, to his presence. "So is me standing here when I should be somewhere over Nevada. But I am here, because we both believed." We kissed again. Properly this time. And it felt like every New Year's kiss I'd ever imagined. Every perfect moment I'd ever dreamed of, all condensed into this single connection. When we broke apart, Adrian's smile was radiant. We left the celebration hand in hand, and I didn't question it, didn't analyze it, didn't try to make sense of how he'd gotten there or what it meant, or whether the dreams had been premonitions or instructions or something else entirely. I just knew that we'd found each other. That should be where the story ends. Happy ending, impossible romance, New Year's magic. But it's not. Because 3 days later, I woke up and Adrian was gone. Not just gone. There was no trace he'd ever been there. No texts on my phone, no profile on the dating app. No flight records showing Adrian Cross traveling from Denver to San Francisco on New Year's Eve. I called the airline. No one by that name had been on any flights that night. I tried to find him online. No social media, no public records, nothing. And when I told people about him, about the kiss, about the impossible night, no one remembered. My friends who'd been at the ferry building swore I'd been alone at midnight. Security footage from that night showed me standing in the crowd by myself, eyes closed, kissing the air. The only proof I have is the dreams. They're different now. Now, instead of searching for Adrian, I see him searching for me. Standing in the same spot I stood, in the same crowd, calling my name. And every night, he gets a little fainter, a little less substantial. I think I understand what happened. We bent reality to be together, and reality is bending us back, erasing the impossibility, making it like we never met. Next December 31st, I'll go back to the ferry building. I'll stand in that same spot, and at midnight I'll close my eyes and kiss the empty air again. Maybe I'll pull him back. Maybe I'll be pulled to wherever he is. Or maybe we'll both finally understand that some loves are too impossible to exist in any timeline. And the best we can hope for is the memory of a single perfect kiss at midnight on New Year's Eve. But I have to try. Even if it costs me everything. Even if I become like him, a ghost of possibility, searching forever for a moment that reality says never happened.